And even in the fastest model of this, it's over 2 seconds of the back and forth to actually get data. In 2 seconds, when you're trading for actual high fidelity applications like Oracle AMMs or perpetuals, this matters so much. So I built a prototype for an Oracle just because he said he had some people to show it to, and he closed a seed round within 3 weeks. So I never thought that Solana would scale to this size where it is taking over 85% of all blockchain volume to this day. And he injected $5 million to bump the price up, way up. And it's really crazy to say that we're 300x the competition, but it's true. A certain type of runtime that is confidential from the rest of the computer, even if your computer has a virus, they could not affect whatever is in this little space. We give the public key of our container. So anything signed with that public key later on, we know is our binary. Yeah, so we are really hitting the limit of how low we can get with this.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of OnlyDevs podcast. Today is a special episode. We have with us Dr. Blocks, the CTO of Switchboard. Welcome to the show, Dr. Blocks.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
Dr. Blocks, welcome to the pod. Would love to know your journey from the beginning and what does Switchboard do? How did you get into crypto? Which is the first question we ask everyone.
Yeah, for sure. So just to kick it off here, for those who don't know, Switchboard is an Oracle protocol available on over 10 plus blockchains. And what's really unique about Switchboard is that we've taken like this first principle approach to how fast you can get verifiable data. When you actually think about data and what oracles can actually provide today, all of these oracles actually come to consensus on their own state layers. And they actually have this middleman before they can actually stream anything to user. The reason they have this is that they all have these consensus models that work a lot like blockchains that exist today, in which all of the different publishers publish to the state layer. They come to some mathematical operation on the confidence they have in this data, and then they relay this back to users. And even in the fastest model of this, it's over 2 seconds of the back and forth to actually get data. In 2 seconds, when you're trading for actual high fidelity applications like Oracle AMMs or perpetuals, this matters so much because essentially anyone who is just streaming from the actual price discovery source can front run you and make sure that you have a worse price or a worse experience on chain. In that case, on-chain trading will never be as good as some centralized system of trading. So if we ever want to actually make on-chain trading the source of where people go to, so it's as good of an experience as a centralized exchange, you need to actually match those speeds. So Switchboard kind of redesigned the entire model of how nodes can come to consensus on data. And I have myself a background in security, and I actually have some expertise in hardware-based proofs, where you have special types of chips that can actually prove the binary they're running. All of Switchboard uses this technology in which an oracle can actually prove exactly what operations is doing and sign all of that with this provided private key or public key that you've actually proved is running this confirmed or validated oracle code. So what we can do with this is that we can actually stream directly from these price discovery sources and sign this and put this on all these different blockchains and still have that verifiability that all these other oracle platforms have. So with this, you can see a huge difference, actually a 300x speed improvement relative to other oracles. And it's really, really a pretty novel design that nobody's really taken an approach for.
And how did you get into crypto? You mentioned a bit about your background at Google, big tech. What made you transition into crypto?
Sure. So I actually have a background in computer security. I taught computer security for a few years and got a master's in computer security. And then after a little stint at Facebook, I went to Google for about 5 years, where I worked on embedded systems on home network security. And then I was a tech lead on the Google Cloud team, where I worked on virtual private clouds. From there, I was planning on going more into the research route, but I had a friend at the time that introduced me to my co-founder, Chris, who actually ran Circle's trading desk. And he saw that Solana, especially at the time, was an upcoming chain. So I built a prototype for an Oracle just because he said he had some people to show it to, and he closed a seed round within 3 weeks. So I decided if there was ever time to go try this, it was going to be now. So that was almost 5 years ago now. And to this day, we have about $4 billion secured on the Switchboard network and 300x the latency improvement to the runner-up Oracle and 18x the throughput for data. So it's really, if you ever want to trade perpetuals, it's going to be the fastest and also safest way to do so.
Wow. You guys also won the 2021 hackathon in the DeFi track, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's,
Way back in
it's
the
a
day.
great, yeah, crazy journey from a hackathon project in 2021 to a project that, secures like 4 billion plus
I
in
know.
TVL.
Yeah.
Did you ever think, when you were writing code for the hackathon that it would become this massive?
While we're actually doing the hackathon, we were coming up with all these other teams in the space, and Solana wasn't even that big then. So I never thought that Solana would scale to this size where it is taking over 85% of all blockchain volume to this day. And in that, I'm very fortunate to have grown with it. So I'm very, very happy, very fortunate. And the people I've met in this space who are just like these small time devs now run Jito or run Jupiter. And it's just like, oh, wow, this is what the world has come to now. This is where it's focused.
It's awesome. I'm kind of curious on the nature of Switchboard. These oracles, as I understand, are also permissionless, and it's like people can build their own oracles, right? So what
Yep.
exactly does it mean? And how do this developers approach this permissionless nature of the oracle, right? Does it mean I can plug in any source, any data feed that I want? uh, how exactly does it work?
Yeah. So there's actually two verticals when you think about Switchboard. One is that low latency offering that I talked about, which is our product called Switchboard Surge. That is the 4 millisecond latency streaming that you can get. But what we actually started with in our original goal of Switchboard is to be an Oracle building platform, so you don't have to ask for permission to get data on chain. And with that, you can go on our site and we have this whole feed builder concept where you can fetch data and then transform data. So let's say you want information from the US Treasury. You can actually get that and then pull out certain fields from their API and just get that as a data feed instantly. And it's very funny for all this hype, especially today, for Pyth and Chainlink publishing US Treasury data. Switchboard's been able to do that for over 4 years. And I actually just published one on Twitter just before this call. So I think it's kind of funny. I don't think people understand the actual practical applications of this stuff, other than saying, "Oh, so and so was selected to publish this." It's kind of a psyop. Sorry, but it doesn't really make sense. You've been selected to publish it. Anyone can go on the site and get the data. So I don't know what you're talking about. You're selected to view that site. Okay, sure.
Interesting. So does this data get validated? So there are two parts, right? One where you focus on well-known feeds, and there you get the lowest latency possible to get the price feed in, and then
Yep.
you have another source where people can permissionlessly build their own feed, and that goes over consensus. Is that the right understanding, or both are the same? Both take the same path.
You can think of it this way. You have set sources for the streaming service that we have Surge.
Okay.
That one's not as configurable, but all of this data is being constantly streamed into oracles. Then the other side is if you build a data feed, what we do on the oracle side is we take a checksum of the job description that you actually want done by this oracle. When you request an update, they will go do that job as defined in your data feed. And then they will sign the checksum of that whole job. So you can prove that the oracles did that work. In both instances, all of the work done by Oracle is signed by that TE, that trusted execution environment. So you know exactly what the Oracle is executing. You know it's executing as it was defined in the approved binary. So in both of these, you're actually running this in this confidential runtime. And whenever the Oracle is requesting data from ustreasury.gov, you can actually verify that it pulled it from there, because the whole encrypted connection is from within that trusted execution environment. So you can prove it fetched from there.
Got it. So the HTTPS request actually happened within the TE. So
Yes,
that means
exactly.
that.
So we can prove that it was to that site.
Got it. So naturally there's like a trade-off that you have to make here, right? Like between securing the feeds, making sure the data is coming from the right source versus keeping it permissionless. So how do you? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how do you factor these into your engineering or product decisions?
So when we're actually running in TEs, the hit on the runtime in the CPU is about 5% of the capacity of the CPU. There's two sides to permissionless. One is data feed creation permissionless. That is, yes, it's totally permissionless. We can actually request anything to be processed from our Oracle schema's job description. The other side is who can actually run an Oracle and join the network. That one is still gated a bit to make sure that you can have proper uptime. Because when you care about data, you want to actually know you have certain parameters of uptime and scalability of the people providing the data. But when they onboard their machines, they all have to onboard inside the trusted execution environments and prove the binary they're running before we approve their keys for the network. So we actually can prove the exact binary they're allowing to sign data on our network. So with that, we can actually have a lot of guarantees on what these people can run. So there is a gatekeeping just to make sure performance checks are kept up, but we have a lot of integrity checks based off of those binary hardware-based proofs.
Interesting. I'm curious, how do you deal with things like, for example, when you're pulling in data from an arbitrary source, right? How that source could change at any point. How do you? I'm assuming you extract the data via an XPath or a JSON path. So if the site changes any of that, the feed ends up breaking. So then that means that you don't get the price. So how is that like a part of? Are you able to identify when such breakages happen, or that's outside of scope for the execution?
So when you make your own data feed, you can always ask us if we're a friend of you to help monitor this. But you
Okay.
owning the Oracle, it's up to you to maintain that and update that as you need.
Got it. So it's the feed owner's responsibility to make sure the.
Yeah, because we actually have no capability of changing feeds that a user's created. We can help on that first party side, the switchboard search side. But if you're making your own data feed, we can't even alter that.
I also, for example, a lot of the DeFi attacks happen because of Oracle manipulation, right? So I'm actually curious. I wanted to double click on how you think about security such that these type of manipulations do not happen.
Yeah. The biggest one and probably most notable one is that Mango one that happened on Solana. And what happened there was Mango opened many applications, but one of them was their lending platform. And they allowed you to open cross collateral lending, which is the main benefit of most of this. They always have it over collateralized, but it doesn't matter to an extent when you have almost no liquidity. So in that attack for Mango, they had a setup where you could actually lend Mango, MNGO, to borrow ETH. And of course, Mango had way less liquidity than ETH did. They only had about $250,000 worth of liquidity on open markets. So what the attacker, Avi Eisenberg, as he's everyone knows now, he actually injected $5 million into the liquid markets on Radium and on, what was the other big one at the time? Whatever it was, I think it was FTX that it was also on, funny enough. And he injected $5 million to bump the price up, way up. To I forgot what the scope was, but it was in the factors of 10x the price. So when he actually 10x the price of Mango because he just bumped up the markets because there was no liquidity, he borrowed 10x the ETH he really should have, and then he let the price tank out. And because he borrowed this and Mango didn't have any real liquidity, he just never paid back his loan. So he was able to just take all that ETH. So even if you have data on a specific token, if you have no liquidity to make sure that price is stable, you can't be using that for lending markets for something as liquid as ETH. You got to be very conscious of the collateral you're letting your users deploy when the underlying price source is, we'll say, malleable.
Makes sense. So in this case, there's nothing Switchboard can do, right? If the price across various dexes or sexes has increased, the Oracle is supposed to spit out the right price, and it's just on the platform.
Yeah, that's behaving as designed.
Interesting. So in this case, the exploit was not necessarily someone going and updating the feed itself, but it was doing it via somewhere else that actually reflected in the price increase. So the oracle ended up getting updated.
Yeah, so what happened is he ended up affecting the true price of Mango for about 25 minutes, beyond any confidence scale you would do with any TWAP as well. So because it was so illiquid, even with the TWAP and those security checks to make sure there's confidence between sources, it comes down to how you design your protocols to be safe when there's that little liquidity. And of course, with Switchboard, there's plenty of ways to actually check the liquidity. You can make data feeds for liquidity as well, beyond just the pricing. That's what's so powerful about having your own Oracle building platform. You don't need to make it on price. You can make oracles on how liquid assets are as well.
This could also potentially allow them to build their own circuit breakers that, if something is
Oh
so
yeah,
artifact, then
we actually have a circuit breaker flow for the transformations where you can bound certain values and allow the feed to fail or fall back to a subsystem.
you mentioned search, right? So
Yes.
I also saw a new product announcement where it can do sub 10 millisecond latency and 300x faster and 100 times cheaper.
Yep.
How does this work? Like, what's the magic behind this?
Yeah, so that's really the magic with streaming via the trusted execution environments. All the Oracle systems that exist today have their own L1 or L2 that acts as their state layer. All the oracles that they have publish their data to the state layer and come to consensus on it. That consensus time takes X amount of seconds for the next block to be produced. For them to relay that to the next user, that also adds time and latency and back and forth. So the whole time it takes for these other oracles to confirm a price is the price discovery time to get to the oracle, then for them to commit, then for them to come to consensus, and then report back to the user. Because Switchboard verifies the runtime when the oracles join the network, you can stream right from the node, and we've done all that verification beforehand. So when we're talking about the latencies, even the closest oracle to us is between 1.7 to 2.2 seconds behind price discovery, which is a lot of time for any adversary to front run you. With Switchboard, you can stream directly. And if you co-locate with the price discovery source, our lower bound right now is 3 to 4 milliseconds.
Interesting. So when you say stream, does it stream directly to the client which constructs the transaction, or is it to the blockchain itself?
You can stream right to the client constructing the transaction, and we stream with signed prices for whatever you subscribe to.
Got it. So this kind of flips the model, right? Because most of your price updates are just since you're attesting them, these are state updates without any contention. So it doesn't really make sense to add the latency overhead of the network's consensus on top of it. So attesting it kind of allows you to send it as a signed input.
Yeah, so we really have separated out the verification of the actual signatures from the streaming. And because we're able to do that is why we can be so much faster. And it's really crazy to say that we're 300x the competition, but it's true.
Yeah. It is also, I'm curious to, for example, multiple concurrent leaders is like a ongoing topic where, as soon as an event happens, you want the ability to send the transaction, and also not just send the transaction, actually execute it with the closest leader, right? So how do you see something like Switchboard layering on top of in the construction like multiple concurrent leaders?
So when we actually have someone consuming a price and sending transactions, they're going to try to send it to one of the leaders closest to them. No matter what, we're going to have that client that isn't the multiple concurrent leaders. So they're just going to be streaming from whatever node is closest to them. So when the user is assembling their transaction, that's the person that's consuming the price. So there's actually a separation between the network that has the, like, let's say three or four leaders up here versus the user versus Switchboard over here. So the user is going to be talking to Switchboard and streaming from there, and then the user then sends the transaction to the multiple leaders. So there's still that degree of separation between having to track those because the user's geolocation is static.
Got it. But so this is on the client side, right? For on-chain programs which rely on external inputs. So what does the latency look like for them? They still need the data on the chain so that they can verify it.
Right. So the question I believe you're asking now is, since the user still has time to confirm their transaction, the data is going to be at least that stale. So when it comes to the user's perspectives, no matter any oracle you have, to get the data on chain, it's going to have to land into a block. So that part is a bit unavoidable for whatever you want to post, whether it be data or not. But there's two things coming right now. One, I'm not sure how much you've heard about Jito's BAM protocol, where validators can actually inject transactions into a block themselves. And in that way, the validators are actually ones pulling the oracle price instead of the user. So that would help a lot, because then you don't have to wait for the normal schedule to pack the oracle transactions to the block. They can basically be prioritized. And the other is when with the release of Alpenglow, they're allowing validators to plug into certain types of block ordering systems, which might prioritize oracles as well from their side. So there might be a world very soon that the user is no longer pulling the oracle updates. It becomes the validators, like you're saying, that multi-leader scheduling service. And then it becomes, well, how close are those leaders to the price discovery source? Because there's two things to think about there. No matter what, in decentralized environments like Solana, they're going to be all over the world. And a lot of the price discovery for major tokens is in Tokyo, because that's where Binance's order matching engine is. So, and OKX is over there as well. So a lot of this is in Tokyo. But no matter what, the speed of light around the Earth is 131 milliseconds. So you're going to hit a little bit of a latency increase just because we can't control what people put their Solana nodes and how they pull that price. So we can do a lower bound when the user's pulling it, but if it's going to be prices pulled by the leaders instead of the users, then they're going to hit some latency increase, just because if someone's running a node in the United States, they're not by Tokyo. We can't help that.
And also, co-locating will help you on some of these network hops, right? If you're co-located with the leader, then these can hit very, very quickly versus having an additional network hop.
Yeah, I mean, there are some networks that are trying to just to co-locate. PithNet actually has 8 of their 10 nodes in Amsterdam, and I know they're actually launching Fogo for this exact reason. Whether the Solana community is happy about that or not for me to say, but they are doing that. And it's valid reason. It's going to increase the speeds, but it's going to limit who can actually run these the network, pretty substantially.
And also, this is like a very different approach from a pull-based Oracle system to like a complete streaming-based, right? I also saw in your documentation that you have this type of bundle which you can use to kind of pipe transactions or pipe the data directly without needing to have a data feed account. How do bundles work?
Yeah, so just for reference, back in 2021 to 2023, Switchboard was doing like 3 to 7% of all Solana traffic, and we learned a lot doing that. One was holding write locks on accounts in the SVM environment slows you down a ton, and it was a huge headache trying to land data first. So we took a new approach of getting rid of accounts completely. And getting rid of the accounts actually lets you stream much faster, because the block ordering engine lets you put in your transaction way quicker, because you don't actually hold any write locks at all. So by doing this, we can actually allow confirmation time for Oracle data to be way faster than it ever was before. And that helps significantly for the speed of data that you see on chain. So that's why we have this new model. You don't need to make any accounts for getting data on chain, and it's very, very optimized for that way.
What do the landing rates look like? Is it like 5 nines of landing rate with so much optimization?
With all of this, and actually we've gotten our compute unit usage down to about 124 compute units, And just for reference, setting priority fees on your transaction is 300 compute units. It is just about free. So you almost always see next slot landing.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's insane.
Yeah.
You also mentioned sale, right? I remember hearing this in your talk at Scalar Die. Uh, so can you talk a little bit more about sale? I mean, my understanding is that sale is the one that sits behind Surge.
Correct. So we actually have had a lot of experience with trust execution environments, specifically AMD Sev. They are there's definitely a large learning curve to start understanding hardware proofs. And to make this easier just for the team, we've actually developed a framework to make all of the trusted execution environment logic and all these syscalls abstracted just to a Docker container. And we give you an SDK to do proving and verifying of TEs. So it's just two calls. You say, okay, prove your Docker container is what it says, and then verify another Docker container. And then sale is just a very simple abstraction to run a Docker container in AMD Sev without even having to understand what the hardware level steps are. So sale is an abstraction away from TEs, so it's really easy and accessible for normal devs.
What is, I think it's worth double clicking on what AMD Sev is. What is AMD Sev?
Yeah, so AMD, as you know, is a chip manufacturing company, and every single chip manufacturing company has a certain feature set. And the actual goal of this feature set is to make a certain type of runtime that is confidential from the rest of the computer. Even if your computer has a virus, they could not affect whatever is in this little space. And whatever's in this little space, you can actually prove the binary that you're loading into the space. And what this whole runtime is, it's called AMD Sev SMP. And it lets you confidentially run something without the host being able to modify it. And with that, you can actually prove you're running inside AMD Sev SMP by creating something called an attestation report. And by creating that report, you could say, hey, I was loaded into this AMD Sev SMP chip, and this is the binary that was loaded. I'm going to sign this with the certificate signed by the chip manufacturer to prove this is the binary I'm running in this runtime. And then anyone can go and verify that. In that way, we actually make hardware proofs for all of the oracles running Switchboard, because AMD has actually signed off saying, hey, this binary is running in this subsection of our chips, and this was the hash of the binary that's running in them.
Interesting. So does it mean that I can use Sail to deploy any type of arbitrary containers?
Yeah, you can use it to deploy any type of arbitrary container, and you can have those convenience methods to prove and verify they're doing exactly what you're saying. And then what we do is, in that proof, we give the public key of our container. So anything signed with that public key later on, we know is our binary.
Interesting. So this is kind of, for example, you have AWS Nitro, and there's also on the decentralized world, you have Fala network and their DStack,
Exactly.
right? So I have, we can switch to get into the fun questions. So I saw you made 2 tweets today, right? I also, it must be super early for you, right? You're in New York. Were you coding all night?
I was up all night. Some stuff. That's kind of my MO though. I don't really sleep.
Nice. So you made 2 tweets, like one where, the first one was around Oracle updates, which got the 124 CU. And
Yes.
then to that, and also in one of your replies, you mentioned that this is like just raw pointer math.
Yes.
So curious to hear more about what that was.
Yeah. So when we actually do signature verifications, I would say that Pith is the other one that's very prominent on chain. They actually verify signatures on a Merkle root that they have for the proofs for all of their data feeds, but this is all in memory. And this actually costs hundreds of thousands of compute units, which is hard to fit in a block, because basically fitting transactions in a block by the leader on Solana is basically a knapsack problem. They have a limit for how many CUs can fit in a block.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of CUs limits you a ton on when you can be included. So unless you're doing special prioritization, that's pretty hard. What we've worked very hard now to do is lower the compute unit usage as much as possible to actually be almost free for the block leader to include in the next slot. And the reason we've done this mostly is because of the advent of Oracle AMMs. All of these Oracle AMMs have actually dominated spot pricing now, so much so it's over 60% of all Jupiter traffic is going to Oracle-based AMMs. And if you want to be competitive with Oracle AMMs, they actually have been using their custom rollups because we have just launched Surge about a month ago, and no Oracle could support the speeds you needed for spot pricing. But now, since we're 4 millisecond latency, we are 124 compute units. We are less than it takes to set your gas fees. It really does make sense for any general purpose prop AMM to use these ultra efficient slim oracles.
Interesting. So how do these prop AMMs work? Do they have their own feeds and they just call you to update the price?
So we are talking to a few that are looking to migrate to us right now because Humidify last 2 weeks has entered the space and they're taking about all of the traffic now. Humidify by itself is doing, I think, over 40% of Jupiter's traffic just because of how often they're updating their spreads. And what Oracle AMMs do is they look at a price off chain, and if that is deviated even by a few bips from the price on chain, what they do is they submit an Oracle update saying, hey, we are going to allow the pricing to be this much below the liquidity pool. The liquidity pool is auto pricing and saying, we're just going to buy it at this price and then sell it off chain as fast as we can. And what they are doing is they're basically taking on risk on chain and then hedging off chain because they know there's that price discrepancy. So it's basically an AMM built for arbitrage. So they are basically live arbing between these centralized exchanges and the prices on chain. So as long as they can do that, that's great. But you need an oracle for that off chain pricing. And what they do is every single slot they are pushing updates out. And if you look at SolFi's transaction, they are pushing 2 updates per slot, but it's a little bit delayed. And they are consuming about 8,000 and 9,000 compute units for every single update, which is a little bit slower.
Then also it's like order of magnitude difference, right? 124 CU and 8,000 plus.
Yeah, so we are really hitting the limit of how low we can get with this. And I'm trying to get lower. For some pointer loads, it's actually consuming about 100 compute units. And I figure that's probably the SVM just doing a page load. But if I can get rid of that, I think I could. I'm trying to figure it out. Maybe I'll try to do like a linked module purely in assembly. Maybe I could get it lower to 20 or so CUs, but that's kind of hopeful.
You also tweeted another one saying maybe I optimized too much. What exactly?
Oh, well, last night I actually found a bug in the Rust 1.90 compiler that I caused it to crash while I was compiling the code. Whoops. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm curious to hear more. It's like, what does the engineering culture at Switchboard look like? How do you guys hire?
Yeah, so we have a pretty lean team. We're about 9 or so people, and everyone on the team is just super passionate about that project because they love building, just making me. So I really look for people with just that fire and that passion to see like how much impact we actually have, especially on the Solana space. And the people I work with just really love building it, and I get along with them too. We just sit on Slack calls most of the day and grind together. I would love to have everyone in a single space, but we are a remote first office.
Nice. So are all of this like based? They're all distributed over the world, or they're all in the US?
Mostly in the US, but then we have Dubai and South Africa.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm very jealous of all the pictures I see of South Africa. It looks beautiful. So I'm planning on
Yeah, South Africa is beautiful. I was there for the Apex
Lucky
in
man.
Cape Town. Wow. What a beautiful country.
Amazing.
Are you hiring for any roles? We'll make sure, if you're hiring, we'll make sure to put the job description on the podcast when it goes out.
We're not hiring just yet, but we have a lot of releases coming out in the next 2 weeks, in which after that, we are looking to hire about 2 roles. And I can let you know for that. We can promote that mid-September.
Okay, fantastic. I think by the time this comes out there at table, it would definitely be
Perfect.
after
Then we're just link
mid-September.
with it. Awesome.
So yeah, what's if I also you guys do a lot of open source stuff for the developers in the audience listening to this. Is there anything that you would recommend for them to get started on, or where do they how do they navigate their way around the GitHub so that they can contribute to Switchboard?
Yeah, if they want to contribute to Switchboard, I think I've done a lot of optimizations on the Rust side, of course, but we have all of the applications we're building on all these other chains. If you want any features, especially on the Move chains, because we have a lot of traffic on the Move chains as well, do let me know if you feature requests, or if you want to help build out some of the new SDKs we have for Surge. Let me know. I'm more than happy to take the recommendations of the community on what you'd like to see built on that side, just for your convenience.
It's awesome. I think we are towards the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Blogs. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, no, it's been
Awesome.
great. Thanks for having me, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope you could. I know you have releases coming up, but hope you could join us in Mumbai.
I'm very tempted to. Never been to India. I'll see what I can do. Honestly, I would love to come.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll talk to you very soon.